by former CEO of Energy UK, Angela Knight. Angela, thank you so much for joining me. Angela, so Keir Starmer, he's talking about this wonderful idea of literally everything coming from green energy, which I presume also means renewables, or is that something different? And if that is the case, is that actually a possibility?
Well, as far as I understand it, he's talking about renewables and he's talking about nuclear. So maybe we should call it low carbon as being the sort of generic term. And also we're talking about electricity. So we still will need gas, of course, for central heating and the like. Now, what is actually in his plan? It's the same sort of thing as we've seen announced by all political parties, actually, over the last few years, that we need to move to low-carbon electricity. We need to do what we can about use of hydrogen and use of batteries. And I think as far as high-level statements are concerned, they're all fine. But the key questions are these. How much is it going to cost? Who's going to pay for it? And have we actually got the technology in place? Right now, to me, I think even the path that we're on seems quite aggressive in answering all those questions. And to bring it forward to the end of this decade, I think is probably one of those things that politicians say in haste and regret at leisure.
Seems very odd that he should be sort of talking in a way, in the same way that this is the sort of thing that Boris Johnson was talking about, right? So I think his was a net zero, now it's maybe Sir Keir Starmer was calling it something else. This was not successful in terms of Boris Johnson. I don't know why he thinks that it'll be a good idea, and I don't even think it's realistic. I mean, Britain's already introduced a new interim target to reduce emissions by 78% by 2035. I mean, isn't he just recycling an idea that we've already had?
Well, that to me is exactly what is happening. There is a difference from what he's saying, which is greening up the electricity system and net zero, of course, but, you know, equally so. They're all part, if you like, of the same whole. Now, if we look at the actual practicalities, and I think that one thing that this crisis has taught us, and the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, is that anything that we are going to be doing and saying in the way of changing, altering or whatever the supply of gas and electricity in this country has got to be realistic and it's got to be costed. Because it is quite correct, we can go hell for leather and build all sorts of additional wind farms, both onshore and offshore. But, of course, the wind doesn't blow all the time. So what are you going to do for the times that the wind isn't blowing and your renewables are being intermittent? And that's when you've got to have a reliable backup. And if you're going to have a reliable backup, the only way that we can do it on low carbon is build more nuclear. Now, you've heard me say before that the nuclear I'm talking about is the small-scale repeatable ones, which take a couple of years to build and they cost a couple of billion. A couple of billion is still a lot of money, but it does mean you can get investment from pension funds and the like into it. But you certainly can't do all that in the next sort of 7 or 8 years. And the cost is going to be very, very high indeed. And that means that we're going to pay for it in taxation, or we're going to pay for it on our domestic and industry bills, or we're going to do both. And to me, it's dishonest not to be realistic, and it's dishonest not to put costs and how we pay for it into the mix as well on any of these statements.